it's not a matter of if the transfer will happen, it's a question of when. It has to happen. It's not that we all live forever. So, absolutely, it is something that needs to be tackled by the wealth management firms, and advisors need to prepare for it.
Welcome to Visionary Advisor. I'm your host, Alex Kirby, founder of Total Family. According to Capgemini's 2025 report, Sail the Great Wealth Transfer, 81% of next-gen high net worth individuals plan to switch from their parents' wealth management firm within 1 to 2 years of inheritance. Not great news. So what do we do about it? To answer that question, we turn to PV Narayan, head of banking in the Americas at Capgemini, who can help us get a better sense of what's really going on here. Sail the Great Wealth Transfer, setting a course to win next-gen high net worth individuals. That's what we're here to talk about today. PV, it's great to have you. You're calling in from Chicago. Wonderful place this time of year before it gets too cold, right?
Absolutely.
Let me read you a couple quotes from the paper, research paper. Call it a research paper?
Yeah, again, it's a thought leadership paper. I think it's a report we've been doing now for 29 years. So absolutely, we do have a wealth of data around the evolution of wealth around the world. And again, it's a report that that kind of looks at the spectrum of players, right? Right from wealth management executives to advisors to high net worth individuals, right? So look at all the players in this ecosystem, and try to look at the wealth space from the different angles, right, from the various different windows, as I call, right, and try to bring all of those different perspectives together in a thought leadership paper that kind of defines what are some opportunities, what are some challenges, right? So collectively they can all improve their game and continue to grow the wealth.
I want to read you a couple quotes and get your reactions. Before I do that, everyone's been talking about this great wealth transfer for a long time. It feels like, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of kind of the boy who cried wolf. We've been talking about it now for 10 years and the numbers growing. And it's like, I still think there's advisors who are like, we've been talking about it for a while. Who knows if it's even going to happen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're still not making any changes. Like, are you telling your clients now, okay, if you've been sitting on the sideline, now is the time to start making changes? And what are you telling them to take some of these numbers and stats more seriously, just broadly?
Again, I think, if you look at our report, we talk about $83.5 trillion of wealth is going to, transition or transfer, right, in the next 2+ decades, right? And obviously, that's a long timeline, but all of that is not going to happen like tomorrow, right? It's going to happen over that period of time. But about, a significant portion of that is, or a reasonable portion of that is going to happen in the next decade. Again, it's not a matter of if the transfer will happen, it's a question of when. So I think, it has to happen. It's not that, we all live forever. So absolutely, it is something that needs to be tackled by the wealth management firms, and advisors need to prepare for it. But I think what's even more important is the fact that the combination of that with technology and the revolution in technology is actually really is actually spotlighting this transfer in my mind, right? Because I think the kind of services that the next generation to whom this wealth is getting transferred, their expectations are way different. Their risk appetite is way different, right? And that's why I feel that the timing is right now.
Yeah.
And versus historically what we have heard, right? I think that's in my mind the biggest thing that stands out to us, right? And again, when we talk to wealth management firms, we hear that they're preparing for it. So it's not like they're silent about it. They're all preparing for it. And what I hear from my clients is that they are beginning to see new kinds of customers coming into their ecosystem because of this great wealth transfer. And when I dig deeper into that, I understand, okay, what do you mean by new kind of customers? And the push is that the more younger generation is beginning to get more savvy with their handling of wealth and their handling of investments, right? And I think, and a challenge that most advisors don't understand them.
Yeah. Well, the people who the money are transferring to, whether it be the spouses first or the rising generations, are different than the people that currently hold the money. That I think we've seen different value systems, different levels of comfort with technology. And I think it's easy to look at a group and sort of discount them
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form. But and of course, there's things that they might not be as strong at
Hmm.
as someone who didn't grow up with this technology or something like that. But there's also things that they're very, very good at. If you've ever, been in a pickle and the person that helps you is like a 16-year-old or something like that, you see these people do have a lot to bring to the table and they do have a whole different level of expectations. Trying to explain to my 5-year-old, and he loves music, and
Yeah.
the world that he's in is any song that has ever been written in the history of music, he can just get, right? And that's the world
Yes.
that he's born into. And he
Yes.
didn't experience like a store not having the cassette you wanted
Absolutely.
or something like that.
I always learn from my teenage kids,
You have
actually.
teenagers?
Yeah, I
You
have
have,
actually, one teenager and one who is just past his teenage. But again, they always chide me that, I'm in technology, but I'm probably not the most savvy user of technology,
sure.
right? And to me, I think clearly what technology has done is democratized access to information.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
actually, the
Yes.
implication of that to the topic we are discussing is profound because it's democratized access to products, right? It's lowered the bar for entry, right,
Yes.
for many people into asset classes, and there is more information that's now available real time. And younger investors are making decisions not just based on what they hear from their advisors or wealth management firms. They have a lot of information available to them, right, in the on the online, right, and
Yep.
they are
Well,
being driven by
and AI.
influencers, right, and yeah, influencers, and they can do their own research with all these savvy tools. So we are talking about like educated investors, unlike if you go back a decade or 2 decades, right? I think where investors relied largely on what their advisors told them, right? And so again, the access to information, in my mind, also changes the risk appetite of people,
Yeah.
right? Because they have more data now to make the right decisions, or more, they are able to take on more risk based on
Yeah.
access to that data. So
Yeah. The stat that I want to start with today, I'm going to read it. It's 81% of next gen high net worth individuals plan to switch from their parents' wealth management firm within 1 to 2 years of inheritance. I want to get your reaction here. The two things that jumped out is, to me, this is forward looking,
yeah,
right? It kind of validates the numbers that we're already seeing, but this is forward looking. They're basically warning
yeah,
all of their wealth managers, and then they're not just thinking about it, they're planning.
hmm,
Like, they're planning on switching. They might already know the wealth firm that they want to take it to, or the things that they want to do with the asset. They're actually planning it. They're not just thinking about it. So what was your, like, when you saw that, what was your reaction? What did you talk about internally?
again, I think the numbers are obviously huge, right? And so obviously I would say we were not surprised, right,
Yeah.
by okay, this is going to happen and why, right? But I think obviously the magnitude of it was a little impactful.
Yeah.
Again, I think, but again, I think when we look at, and we see that across generations, right? I think generations are different, various generations are different, 2 generations out, they are different. And I think, what caught our attention was, a few things, right? One is a different risk appetite for the younger generation to whom the wealth is getting passed on to, right? Again, one could argue that they've never seen a downturn, so their risk appetite is different, or they have a higher risk tolerance. But also, as I said, the access to data allows them to make better decisions, right? So they're looking into a different product classes, right? So they're looking for asset classes like alternative investments, you know, so access to private markets, access to offshore markets, because they want to boldly grow their wealth, right? Unlike the baby boomers are more focused on preserving it, these folks are trying to grow their wealth.
Yeah.
And then I think they're seeking firms that want to a little bit integrate with their lifestyle, and they want to work with firms and advisors who understand them first, understand their
Yeah.
values, what they want out of life, want to integrate. They want people who will integrate into their into their life and their life journey and the moments that matter to them, and anticipate things and bring things to them, right? So
Yeah.
what does that mean? That means largely they're looking for more value added services, right? Whether that is, if I look at purely financial aspects, they're looking for better education, financial education. They're looking for better tax planning, estate planning kind of stuff. But they're also looking for what I call concierge services like healthcare, you know, travel, and they're looking for kind of support of all along all those different spectrums, right? And
Yeah.
you know, these people are digitally fluent. I don't want to call them digital native anymore. They're super fluent digitally. That's the only thing they probably know. So they want to make sure that these firms and advisors are meeting them in their channel of choice, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to create value to them beyond the research that they can themselves do with the plethora of tools that is available to them, right? This is a generation that is immersed in AI and they're using that in their day-to-day lives, right? So
Yeah.
the younger generation is becoming AI first. So the wealth management firms and the advisors are match up to that so that they know they can understand what these investors already know and try to create value beyond that.
Yeah. I mean, certainly what worked 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, isn't really going to work. The advisors that are continually pushing their value proposition, a couple specific comments here. One is our software, our family OS,
Mm-hmm.
when you're able to actually see the purpose and values and some of the legacy goals of your client,
Yeah,
that is understanding them on a much deeper level and actually understanding them in a way that they might not even have understood themselves,
absolutely.
right? And so if you're an advisor and you're thinking, okay, I ask you about a client and you say, okay, PV has some kids, he wants to retire someday and maybe pay for college. That's just not specific enough.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
every single person that I know. So it's not specific enough. And at the same time, the human element, I think, is the hardest to replace. And so if you can add value in those human interactions with the younger people, like, man, I really like sitting down and talking through a problem with PV,
yeah,
my advisor, that, and that might mean that they come to the meeting having done some research and having, educated themselves, but that doesn't mean that they don't need help making the decision. Um,
absolutely. Absolutely agree. I think what I think, you know, the advisors, they all know through their planning, estate planning with these with their clients that they know who these beneficiaries are. They know their
right.
names. But beyond that, I'm not sure they're spending time to understand these beneficiaries, right?
I
Whether
agree.
they are spouses or whether they are children. And I think what technology can afford us today, which probably didn't about a decade or two ago, right? Is to allow us to understand these beneficiaries a lot more, right?
Yeah.
And what I see some of the more successful firms doing out there is they are trying to get closer to these beneficiaries by offering the first step I see them as offering educational programs, right? So they're trying to kind of engage with them, right? And kind of offer them some of those insights.
I just want to say something on that education piece is like 99% of the education I see is financial education, right? And there are other areas
Hmm.
that if you want to make education one of your core services for
Yes,
these rising gen, it doesn't just have to be this is how you balance a checkbook,
absolutely.
right? You can go into much broader areas.
Absolutely. And again, but where I'm going is that they need to spend that time. Its first step starts with engagement, right? So I think, even in any business, right, 50% of the battle is won by showing up, right? So I
I feel
think,
like it's more.
yeah, these guys need to show up first and then start talking to them and then start kind of beginning to understand who they are and, kind of start kind of building a persona and a profile of them and figuring out how they would journey with them and those wealth choices happen. Right? So I think that's the shift for advisors. How do they move from more of an operational advisor to a trusted partner, right?
Yeah.
With the ultra high net worth and the family that they are kind of working with, right? So they can continue to retain these customers and they don't
Yep.
fall off the radar in 1 to 2 years, right? But
We
again, there are
often
more things beyond that that we already discussed that they need to make sure they have, right? The product mix, the access to offshore markets, the right technology tools and platforms. So it's not a one or two pieces. So all of these pieces need to come together so that they can continue to retain these clients.
Yeah, I forget who did the stat, but it's like 75% of the rising gen have never even heard from their parents'
Hmm.
advisor, right? So to me, when I see this stat, it's like, okay, 81% of these people are going to move assets. That is kind of out of our control in a way,
Yeah,
but reaching out and introducing yourself, that is fully in your control,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, no,
Just
agreed.
saying, hi, I've been working with your parents for 3 decades. They have obviously told me a lot about you. I would love to just introduce myself to you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that is the first place I would start, and I think the journey can kick off from there,
Yeah.
and there'll be more ways to then begin to start supporting them, with their needs.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, the inheritance conversation is the first conversation that you have with them. You can have a phone call, ask them how college is going, ask them what's going on in their life.
Absolutely.
Just like if you asked one of your close friends to have a conversation with your son,
Absolutely. And again,
right?
they need to understand where they're spending most of their times, what they're getting influenced by, who are they getting influenced by. I think those things become important in a world where, the next generation can get access to information and can connect with people sitting at their home. They can have more, I don't want to say whether they're friends, but definitely a lot of acquaintances and voices that influence them just by sitting at their home and not going anywhere. Right. So I think it's
Right.
important for advisors to understand that so that they know what is their value system, what is their mindset, right? I think those things are critical. And, that's the human aspect of this wealth management business that is going to become more and more crucial, right? As we move on. And I think when I
Yeah.
talk to wealth management firms, the other thing I hear is that these younger investors are also willing to pay for advice. So it's not that you touched on that point that it's not that they don't need advice. Again, they have access to all of this data and all of this information, and sometimes it's can lead to its own paralysis as well.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
there is a spectrum of people out there that need the advice and they're willing to pay for it, right? But I think the advisors need to look for where is the place where they can bring that added value, right? In line with what their life goals are.
Yeah. I want to move on to talk about technology a little bit, but I think like this that what we were just talking about. If you're an advisor listening, it's like if you want to be in business for the next 10 or 15 years, or if you care about the valuation of your business, more and more of these acquirers are asking about the asset retention through transfer. And
Yes.
we tell all of our clients, we're like, how many of your relationships are multi-gen?
Mm-hmm.
Very few firms even have the answer
Yes.
to that question.
Yeah.
And so starting to look at some of those things so you can be proactive as a firm and get out in front of that. I mean, the goal, like some of the best multifamily offices in the country, that 99% of their relationships are multi-gen,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that
Yeah.
creates continuity and it makes it
Yes.
easier and all that kind of stuff. So,
I would like to add a little bit on the from an advisor perspective is where I see where they are challenged today is that the wealth management firms they work with, whether they have the right tools and platforms accessible to them to support these investors, right? Whether they have access to the right, asset classes.
yeah,
Again, I heard through one of the firms more recently that you know, 30% of the advisors out there probably don't even offer an alts, asset class to their investors. So if that's becoming an important asset class, then they need to be getting more familiar. So the education is not just on the investor side, the
yeah,
education is also on the advisor side to understand these kind of complex asset classes and kind of begin to educate themselves more about it and understand the liquidity aspects of it, the risk aspects of it, right? So they can then feel more comfortable in guiding their investors, right? So
yeah.
again, those are some of the finer things to be kind of looked at as they want to begin to support the next generation.
Yeah, to that point, we've also seen clients, if they lose the assets, sometimes it'll be to a firm that's not even in their backyard. And so I think the competition is now national or international, where
Absolutely.
a young person, if they know someone or like a firm in, Nevada, and they're in South Carolina, they don't totally always necessarily really care where the advisor
Absolutely.
is.
Absolutely.
And so that's good, but it also means that you're not just competing with the wealth management firms that you might see in your local business journal or something like that.
Absolutely.
Because if they type in
The playing field is much wider, and
much wider.
obviously it's a super competitive space. And but again, I think what at least one of the stats that jumped out at me was that if you're 1 in 2 relationship managers are going to switch their wealth management firm, right? So and again, that goes back to the kind of capabilities and the platforms and the tools that they have access to, and the access to the kind of product classes or asset classes for investment. So
we're going to do some technology, some talent, and then I'll get some predictions from you. So the technology quote is 47% of relationship managers are dissatisfied with their firm's digital tools and technology. So this is the relationship managers themselves saying they're dissatisfied, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And that was a good segue. My stat that 1 in 2 relationship managers are not satisfied with the tools and platforms that they have access to.
Yeah. Okay. That's what you're talking about right there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the way I look at it. Right. So that's exactly that particular metric.
What does that mean?
Again, I think what really, if I look at that next generation, again, what are they looking for? They're looking for, a customer experience that is similar to Netflix or Amazon, right? I think, and so they want that kind of real time access to information, right? They want it available either on a web channel or a mobile channel, or in their, even if they are somewhere in the middle of working through something on their mobile phone and they have a question and they feel they're not getting the answer, if they call their advisor, the advisor should be able to know their context and why they're calling them and be able to address that, right? So this kind of omni-channel type of capability, I think, is super important. And they're expecting a lot more personalization, right? So it's not about, like, as you mentioned early on, that, hey, I want to support my kid through an education and certain other, basic life goals, which are fairly common amongst people. Once you know their context, then can you provide more specific help and support to them? So once you know their life journey, can you anticipate their context or what's going to happen next or the moments that matter, and can provide advice as that anticipate that and provide that advice. And the kind of personalization that they're expecting.
Yeah.
Like, for an advisor, before they go into a meeting, can some of the tools and platforms, and in this case AI, can it help them with all of the prep work, right, that they need to do some portfolio analysis, do some research, and maybe even provide some insights to their clients before they come into a in-person call with them, or a meeting, right? So that they can be more pointed in their discussions, right? And again, those are the things that kind of they're talking about in terms of capability sets.
Yeah, I mean the fact that it's 50% are dissatisfied, that's pretty high number.
Yeah.
And then when you think about the clients and the advisors, my guess is most of the advisors that are dissatisfied are also on the younger side of this, right? And as you said, they grow up with Netflix, YouTube, Amazon, clean user interfaces. Amazon's ever lost one of your packages, it's like the easiest thing in the entire world to deal with. And so that's kind of like the bar, fair or unfair.
Yeah.
And then I think there's also people will give you the benefit of the doubt on some of the tech. They're like, I understand you're not Netflix, but you can't be so far behind that it's like you're not even trying. So do you think, if there's advisors listening to this, or advisors that are frustrated at the rate that their firm is moving, what do we tell them?
Again, to me, I think the large wealth management firms, they understand this. They understand the challenges, and I think, in my mind, 65 to 70% of them understand this problem. About 30% are able to do something meaningful. And large part of that is because of a lot of these firms have a lot of legacy investments in technology, and what we call in our parlance technical debt.
Yeah.
And that technical debt exists in their technology landscape, exists in their data landscape, right? Now, many of them have grown through acquisitions, so they have what I call many systems that do very similar things.
Yeah.
So, trying to bring them all together and coalesce them and kind of, modernize and simplify them again. I would say 30% of them are on that journey, but it's going to take time. It's not something that can happen overnight. Again, remember, this is a very regulated environment, right? So it's not like you can flip the switch and, roll new things out. Like fintechs can do that, but, financial services cannot, firms cannot do that, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's important from an advisor perspective to understand the challenges these firms are facing, but also understand their plans and how they are addressing them and how they are rolling out new capabilities, right? How they are rolling out more real-time capabilities, right? Around areas that advisors are seeking better efficiencies, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's the dialogue that these advisors need to have with their firms to understand their roadmap and kind of challenge them, right? So they can roll out new capabilities, right, that will allow them to address their investors. So I
Yeah.
think to me it's a journey. That journey has started, but I think that the firms that will embrace the technology fast and move fast, right, both in simplifying their landscape, in establishing the right data infrastructure, because that is important to kind of drive the more personalized services that I'm talking about, right, to you know leverage AI more effectively, right, you need the right data infrastructure, right? So I think firms need to understand the roadmap of their firms, of their advisors need to understand the roadmap of these firms to roll out all these kind of capabilities.
Yeah. And if you're an advisor considering a move,
Hmm.
or you're a firm who's looking to acquire, you know, really understanding that this can be an advantage.
Yeah,
Or if you're on the advisor side, make sure that you're going to a firm that is thinking about their roadmap in a really thoughtful way, and not just saying, you know, this and this and this, and then you go and do the transaction, and it's
yeah,
just kind of more of the same,
and
so to speak.
being agile about it is important. So don't wait for the big mega releases, right? Start rolling
Right.
out and start rolling capabilities like the Netflixes of the world or the Amazons of the world, right? They anticipate and they roll things out faster because with new technology, even new things become very stale very quickly.
The next quote I want to read to you is: there's an emerging talent crisis, with 48% of relationship managers expected to retire by 2040, 15
Hmm.
years. Wealth management firms risk eroding client assets under management and losing long term relationships without a strategic plan to retain and develop talent.
Hmm.
What do you think?
Well, again, I think again clearly the current generation of advisors are also at the point where they will be retiring. Again, the fact that the great wealth transfer is happening, and some of these advisors were supporting the previous generations,
Yep.
so it's natural that they are going to retire. So that means that again newer generation of advisors are coming into the mix, and obviously they are going to be have to be educated more.
Yeah.
Again, they're already digitally fluent, right? So I think they will naturally gravitate to firms that have all the superior digital capabilities, right? So they
Yeah.
will have choices who they move to, right? So these firms need to meet them where their needs are from a digital fluency perspective, but obviously they are wanting to where they need the mentorship is the investment management and the coaching around all of that, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's the place where you know they can use them extra help, and these firms can help them and support them, right? At least that's where I see the opportunities from an advisor perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's different skills and mindsets. If you were thinking about what you might want in a wealth manager who is starting their career today versus someone a couple decades ago, you might come up with a different picture in your mind.
Hmm.
To me, the interesting thing on this, if it's like 10 or 15 years, you have time, but one of the challenges that we see is, one, lack of mentorship,
Hmm.
and sort of some of these older partners not doing the type of coaching, leadership, mentorship activity that really the younger generation desperately needs. Like getting them comfortable in some of these areas that they're not comfortable with. And that can go both ways.
Absolutely.
Like we talked about your kids helping you with something, you can also help your kids with something, and everyone can grow from it. But
Yep.
the other one that is interesting to me is like institutionalizing some of this client knowledge where if it's all in the brain of one person who doesn't happen to take great notes, um, then this relationship that you've had for 30 years or 40 years or 50 years,
Yes.
once that person is gone, they might represent 90% of the institutional knowledge of that relationship. And it's fine until they leave. And then the new team comes in and they don't have the background. They don't have the understanding. They don't know all the ins and outs of this family or this client. And to me, it goes way beyond their assets and what their portfolio looks
Yeah.
like. It
Yeah.
goes into the history of the family, the people, their preferences,
Yes.
the whole story of the family,
Yes.
figuring out a way to institutionalize some of that stuff so that it doesn't walk out the door and it's not something you can do overnight, right?
Completely agree. And I think you made some interesting points in there. Again, to me, it's about today technology exists, right? So I think we talked about what are the right skills, the right mindset, and the right tools. And I'll start with the right tools, right? Today the technology exists to mine all of that information, right? Like need not be sitting in someone's head. So we are having
Right.
this interaction. We can turn on an AI note taker to capture that information when nobody even needs to write a single piece of anything down, right?
Right.
And
Right.
it can give us a great summary, and that can actually stay back, and someone can learn and go play that back, like an upcoming advisor in the firm can play
Hmm.
that back and listen to what the conversation was. And we can run active analytics on that to understand the emotion of the investor, what happened, who's that can mine this information, so the knowledge transfer to that next generation can be easier. Obviously, as I said, the second piece is that a lot of the tech exists, but really the human aspect of advice will never change. So I'll slip a little bit to having the right skills for these upcoming advisors is how can they understand their clients better? How can they be more empathetic, right? And I think that's the
Yeah.
human aspect of advice, right? And I think that is the tough one again for the next generation of advisors, and there comes a lot of that through practice, right? And being able to engage and being able to listen and understand their choices, right? Versus jumping first with their thoughts and opinions about what it needs to
Yeah.
be. So I think so that's the right tools, the right skills. I think the focus on the human aspect is important, and developing the right mindset, right, which is to be more of that trusted partner, right? And that shift in mindset is needed. Also, the shift in mindset is needed for embracing the right tools and technology to being AI first, right? For the younger generation of advisors, it's easier, but even existing folks need to turn on that meeting note taker when
Yeah.
they're having these conversations to capture that, right? So again, those are the implications for that advisor workforce, right? As a bulk of them are beginning to start retiring, how do they coach that next generation?
I know. We were talking about that McKinsey. There was the McKinsey study said there's going to be an advisor shortage, and I don't know if I totally agree with that. I feel like the really good advisors who adopt the right mindsets and adopt the right tools are going to be more productive
Yeah,
and capture more assets than they ever could have before. The best advisors in the country might be able to do 10x in
absolutely,
AUM what they're doing
absolutely,
right now, right?
absolutely.
Like,
Maybe to your quote that there's a shortage of advisors, probably a large part maybe coming through the upcoming workforce that is retiring.
yeah, yeah,
And then is the next generation of advisors, have they come up to speed? Again, you talked about the mentorship, have they come up to speed? But definitely when I go back and talk to my clients, I touched upon this earlier, they are definitely seeing that investors are willing to pay for advice. So there is a demand for advice, and that means by virtue of that there's a demand for advisors. But also AI will supercharge the advisor, right? If used right, that will help them improve their productivity, and they can scale their customers that they're handling. And that's what
yeah,
bigger firms are trying to do. They're trying to scale and reach more customers, right? But I don't think it's a even smaller firms are able to compete effectively with these larger wirehouses, right? Because of the use of technologies. In my mind, technology is kind of a little bit leveling the playing field, right?
yeah,
And so where it becomes key is then engaging with the investor, understanding their life goals, and kind of being able to create that added value and going on that journey of becoming a trusted partner. And to do that, what do you need? What kind of product mixes you need? What kind of uh, you know, digital platforms do you need access to so that you can effectively and efficiently serve your investor community, right? I think that is what the advisors, should be really focusing on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's still a very viable career path in a lot of
Absolutely,
ways.
absolutely, it is.
Like
Absolutely,
if I
absolutely.
was a young person trying to think of career paths where I could have a chance to make money and help people,
Yeah,
I think an advisor is still there for a lot of people, but maybe, it's going to be hard to out financial plan AI,
yeah, yeah,
right? And so maybe some of the things but facilitating a multi-generational family meeting,
yeah.
that's going to be a reach for AI, I think for a long time, or just having these like human discussions. And so as you start to think about like what skill sets these advisors might need, it is probably less technical than it
Absolutely.
was in the past.
Again, they are already enough digitally savvy in my mind. So it
Yeah,
is going to
right.
be the human skills. It is going to be important. And I think one of the, I heard from one of the larger wealth management firms that 1 in 6 advisors that are coming new to the firm are younger investors, right? That's about 15 to 16% of whoever they're coming in new are younger investors. And so again, they have to figure out, and again, while most young investors will first start with a brokerage account because they want to play
Yeah,
around and figure out and learn, but eventually they start realizing that there is a value to getting the advice and they're willing to pay
sure.
for it. So I think we need to understand that continuum, right? And advisors need to start recognizing that, right? And kind of maybe even figuring out how to offer that next generation some kind of sandbox to play with and, help them do basic trading.
So just as we're winding down here, PV, it's been wonderful to have you. We'll have this report in the show notes and all the links that your team provided. If we I know I said I was going to ask you the 10-year look ahead, but everything is changing so fast that I feel like 10 years is just it's
Way too
not
far
even
out there. Way
yeah,
too
way
far
too
out
far
there.
out. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if we think about the firms that are going to thrive in the next 5 years, is there something that jumps out to you that is going to separate these firms that we haven't already sort of touched on?
I'm sure, again, through this conversation, it was wonderful chatting with you. I think we touched upon pretty much most of the things. But if I were to summarize the firms that will prevail and probably can leapfrog others, right, will be the firms who understand their investors, right? Okay, the advisors and investors, and can essentially have a strong engagement model with their investors, right? They can understand, anticipate their needs, and they are able to kind of bring the right kind of investments to support their needs, right? And I think, and that means, allow them a wider product mix and access to, a wider set of asset classes, right? I think that's going to be important. They are going to win. The firms that can fit into the life journeys of their investors, right, can
Yeah.
bring these value added services, concierge services, right? That's going to be important. And they have the right level of digital capabilities, right? Which I call, meeting their investors in the right, in the right channel, right?
Yeah.
At the right time, right, is very important, right? So I think those are the firms that I believe are going to leapfrog and, continue to drive. Uh, and again, and the firms that are focused on innovation, right? I think those are the firms that are going to continue to drive more value and grow their AUM.
Thank you for your time. We'll look forward to seeing what these numbers look like
Sure.
next year and discussing some other research with you in the future. PV, thank you very much.
Yeah. Pleasure chatting with you, Alex.
That is all we have for you today, Visionary Advisors. Until next time, remember the future of wealth starts with you.